welcome to HR Hacks and Halos, a podcast where we strip back the workplace, call out toxic cultures, and talk about real change. I'm your host, Jivan Dempsey. I'm a HR consultant passionate about transforming the way we work. This is your space for real talk, actionable insights, and the occasional spark of inspiration. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's been shaping careers and holding many women back for far too long: the invisible barriers to success and how to break through them. My guest today is Lisa Quait, a powerhouse coach for women executives who's on a mission to help women shake off the emotional baggage, challenge limiting beliefs, and step into their full potential. She knows firsthand the pressures that women face, glass ceilings, whether those are real or self-imposed, the constant balancing act of family and work, and societal expectations that just weigh us down. In this conversation, Lisa talks about success. She also talks about transformation. Whether you're an HR leader, an ambitious woman in the workplace, or someone who just mentors the next generation, this episode is packed with insights and inspiration for you. So go grab that coffee and let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to HR Hacks and Halos. And this week, I've got the amazing Lisa Quait with me. So welcome, Lisa. It's really lovely to have you with me on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jivan. How are you today?
I am doing all right. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. All is good in the world at the moment.
Indeed, indeed. So, Lisa, let's just introduce you for the audience. I know that you are a coach specifically for women executives. You're a business entrepreneur, and you're also a host of the highly successful podcast, Real Women Stories. So, it's a big boost for me to have you on the podcast because hopefully you're not going to compare, but my style is slightly different. But, I've got to be open and I've got to be big about it, that these things will happen. And actually, it's all a learning opportunity. So I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's get going then, Lisa. Let's talk about, first of all, your role as a coach for women executives. What exactly does that mean?
Sure. It's quite interesting because I get a lot of questions and people say, what is a coach? Like, what, a life coach? What does that mean? And a lot of people get a bit confused with having a therapist and having a coach. So therapy really is about trauma-based kind of conversations and, people go through their own journey and they really have to reflect back on what's happened to them in the past. And then life coaching is about moving forward with our lives. It's about, looking at the opportunities where we are in our lives, what we've got. Now, I have come across so many women in my career before I was a coach, and now I am a coach, where women just feel like they could just be doing a little bit more with their lives and they feel a bit stuck. And we tend to find ourselves in this kind of frozen paralysis of life where which direction do I go in now? Or what are the opportunities that are there for me? So life coaching is really, and the coaching that I do with executives, it's about looking at where they are now and really unwrapping how they got to where they are now and where they want to go with their future. I have coached both executive women and also people who are kind of looking at starting new companies, being entrepreneurs themselves. So it really doesn't stop in that particular field. But I tend to meet those kind of women within the work that I've been doing over the last 7.5 years.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that context. Why women?
Oh, wow. Okay. I just have this belief that as women, we deal with a lot. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in lives. And don't get me wrong, I love my husband. I think men are great in this world because men and women, there should be this equality that goes on. But we have to carry a far more lot of suitcases on our shoulders and rucksacks and backpacks as we go through our lives.
Right.
And I think as women, we do struggle because things that have happened in our lives really do tend to start to hold us back. We hold on to we're emotional creatures. And therefore, with emotions, we react in different ways. And we start to create this persona that, you know, from when we were young all the way up as we get older, and then we sometimes lose ourselves somehow. So it's really about understanding who we are as women and knowing that we can aim higher than where we are right now. It is more to do with, I think, you know, the question you asked me, why women? Because I really feel that women do carry the heavier load, and I feel that women do need the support in order to navigate their life and push through that glass ceiling.
Yeah. So let's just unpack that.
Yeah.
I don't mean that as a pun at all, because you talked about women carry the suitcases, they carry the rucksacks. What do you mean by that? Let's really kind of understand what that means.
Throughout our lives, we tend to go down or go on a journey. And in our life, we can choose certain directions that we go in. And people will have an impact on our lives through conversation, through situations, be it, you know, at the very, very offset at school. You know, girls at school, I know from my kids, sometimes we're not very nice people when we're at school. You know, we can be nasty in the playground, and things can happen.
Yeah.
And that's where this really begins. And that's what I mean by we have this suitcase.
Yeah.
So through each decade of our life, we will create and we will have an environment around us with people around us that will impact our life. And as emotional creatures, we start to layer up this suitcase. And we start from the underwear and the socks right through to the trousers and the dresses. And remember, those garments can change as we go through our lives as well. You know, how we behave, how we dress, how we perceive ourselves, how other people perceive us. So we then create this whole persona, and we've carried all these different layers throughout our lives that really, we've now created a bit of negativity, and that then stops us from being who we are able to be and have that self-belief in creating this beautiful, I would say, butterfly. And we use the word transformation a lot within the coaching practice, because, you know, if you think about the transformation of a butterfly, that's exactly how I think about women and how we should be.
Yeah. I do like that analogy, because actually all women we're all caterpillars, aren't we, to begin with, and then we do transform into a beautiful butterfly, if only we can kind of find the way of breaking through our chrysalis and to allow us to open up those wings. I like the analogy because it kind of like does really create that kind of movement, doesn't it? And a journey from that kind of chrysalis through to that opening of the wings. And the way you kind of described the fact that we carry the rucksacks, which then becomes a suitcase, which then becomes a trunk, which then becomes something else, because we're carrying it in through the generations, we're holding on to it. What is it about your work that helps to unpack all of those layers so that those wings can be spread and we can be the butterflies that we all need to be? Is it something about the mindset, do you think, female mindset in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as I said, and, you know, we are emotional creatures, and we do hold on to a lot, and we do have a lot of pressure, because we are the race that has to kind of, we're expected to behave in a certain way and live our lives in a certain way. So yes, it is about mindset, but it's also about being open to being curious and understanding where all these beliefs have come from. Why are we holding on to all these feelings? Where have they come from throughout our lives? And it's so important to really go through that transformation, as we said about the caterpillar with the butterfly. Let's go back to basics. You know, what is it? What's my background like? Where did I come from? How did I grow up? What was my family situation like? What happened when I started, you know, to go into the working world? And who did I meet? What situations, what conversations did I have with people? Because sometimes we don't realize that our subconscious holds on to a lot of information. And there are times in our lives that somebody may say something to us, and that one conversation could either have a negative impact on us or a positive impact on us. But often enough, we hold on to the negative stuff. And that's what really causes us to prevent us from moving forward. So yes, it's about mindset, but it really starts off with understanding our behaviors, our triggers, who we are, our background, and where we come from.
Right.
So the work I do really is in 3 different phases. Mm-hmm. And I've just described the first phase. It's all about getting to know you and understanding your background. And then the second phase, it's all about facilitating change. How can we change those situations? So if I'm at work and I may be getting triggered by my boss who's not making me feel really good about myself, I know that I'm doing a good job, but the way he makes me feel makes me behave in a certain way. And really, I start playing small because I don't feel like I'm good enough. So how can we reframe that? Is that true? Is it actually true? Is our boss really making us feel that way? Or is it just the fact that that's his communication language and we are interpreting it in a different way? And then how can we then show up in the next conversation with our boss to make him understand, hey, that makes me feel, like I'm not doing a good job. Open up and have those conversations, because I can bet you it's how we're interpreting what they're saying to us. And they might just be busy. So they're giving us throwaway comments, and the language and the communication that they're providing for us is not serving us.
Right.
So how can we change that?
Yeah.
How can we change the situation, reframing how we're thinking about the situation, and what can we do? What can we do to get the reaction that we want so that we know that we're doing a good job? That's just one example. So it's really about, having a look at the different situations. And remember, everyone's personal situation is different. So I'm just giving you a very, very high level example of how we can reframe things, how we can change things. So it's all about mindset, reframing, acknowledging that this is how we're feeling, and what can we do in order to get the right response and make ourselves feel better and believe in ourselves and get other people to understand how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And then you have a third stage, and that's really about the root cause and then going through the transformation. And it's about actioning those points that we would discuss within phase 2 to then start really seeing how things can transform. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of practice, which is why we do coach people, and which is why I feel that coaching is really important, because sometimes we need to have those conversations. And it's not about me telling you your thoughts and feelings. It's about me asking you appropriate questions to get you to think about those situations, why you're feeling the way you are. Why do people make you feel the way they are? Is it a trigger that's happened from way back when, that you've suddenly created this story in your head that we then need to look at reframing and changing the narrative? So then you can show up and be the person you want to be, rather than be this lesser person of who you are with all these kind of negative thoughts and feelings and worries and concerns and anxieties.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like the example that you gave in terms of, if your boss spoke a bit sharply to you, how we may, as females, how we may interpret it. But how would a man interpret that? Because that equally would happen to a man in a very similar situation. Where do you think the difference is?
I feel that, again, and I'm going to go back to the load that we carry, men and women. I'll give you an example. You've got a husband and wife, they go to work. The wife has got a heavy workload, as has the man. But the wife has also got a personal workload that goes on at home. And I'm not saying all men are like this, because there are some amazing men out there. But we as women do have to still carry that personal stuff that goes on whilst we're still carrying our heavy business load. And I know that I've been through it myself, where at lunch times, sometimes I don't have a lunch break because I'm on the phone doing all my admin-y stuff, or I'm having to, sort out bits and pieces with the kids or with family stuff going on. The kids will call me. dads don't tend to get that.
Mm.
And I feel that women carry a lot more workload than men. And what happens is that we take on so much, our brains are going quick fire, that we then start getting a bit anxious. We start, we can multitask up to a point, but then it becomes a little bit strained and our thinking is not clear if we have too much going on. So it's also about breaking down your time allocation to specific tasks. So that's where the men and female balance of the scales, I think it weighs more for females, and females do need that extra support to carry themselves through their business world, in their business life, with their business relationships, and then also in their personal relationships with their children and their families.
Yeah. So Lisa, I really like that. When I went back to work, I carried in a huge amount of emotional baggage with me because I knew I was leaving my children in nursery in order to go back to work. And I know it's almost like not a choice these days, but to have to get over the guilt and actually to be able to still deliver, to the very best you can within a workplace, while knowing that your children are there, that's being looked after by somebody else. And the narrative that goes on in your head in terms of you should be at home, you shouldn't have strangers looking after your children. And yet I knew they were safe. I knew that they were in the best place. Nursery, they're engaging, they're really happy, but the guilt never really went away. And it was something that I carried, but my husband didn't carry so much. He was the logic brain saying to me, they're in the best place. You wouldn't be able to do half the things that the nursery can do because they're the experts. But still, you carry that with you, and it does frame how you see your workplace.
100%. And, going back on to my past experiences, because all of my life experiences has led me to where I am today. As a coach, we do have to think about what we've been through, because you have to be, empathetic, and you have to understand the pressures of the working world and life. And I've worked from the age of 14. When I had an incredible job, I had big budgets. I just got married, had my daughter, and I just remember worrying about whether or not I put the bottle in the bag. Had I give it to the nursery? Have I left her with a little Donny? She has this, teddy bear.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, I'm sitting in this board meeting and suddenly in my head goes, oh my God, what about my daughter? What about my daughter? How do how can we walk into that board meeting and be around all these high level people if we've got all that baggage going on in the back of our minds? So it's all about clearing our minds and being able to think clearly, make sure that we're prepared for what's going on, but we're not stressing out at the same times, because, it is just so damn hard being a woman and going into the working world. Like
Absolutely.
I said, I think one of the hardest things is when you go on maternity leave as a female and then you go back into the office and suddenly you're hit with baby, working. I'm just now coming back into my job. Was my maternity cover better than me? This is what I'm talking about. All these kind of self-beliefs that we've created in our minds, which are incorrect. All the worries and the concerns. And, I know I carried them throughout my working life. I suddenly stepped back and I started playing small. I stepped back and I thought, oh my God, I've been off work for 6 months. This girl's been in my job. I walked in there thinking, crap, are they going to think she's better than me? What if I can't hit my budget? Now I've got my baby to think about. What if I've given her the bottle? Oh my God, how am I going to hit my targets?
Yeah.
I've got to make sure I leave work on time now. I can't stay late. If I need someone to pick up my daughter, is there going to be someone there? And that's what I mean by women carry that. I'm not saying men don't, but the woman has to organise it all. It is very, very rare that a man will organise all of that stuff. He will just get on with his work and go, right, I'm leaving at 5, right, I've got to go home now. Doesn't think about all of that. And it's just because we're built differently.
Yeah.
We're really built differently. And, if there are any men listening to this, I'm sorry if I'm upsetting you by saying that, but it is true. it is true. We are the coordinators. We have to, have to plan everything. We have to schedule everything. Yes, men do carry the load, but we still have all that stuff going on in our heads.
Yeah.
And whilst that's going on in our heads, how can we be the best version of ourselves when we're going into that boardroom and we feel confident and we have that self-belief? So that's some of the work that I do as well.
Yeah, I understand. You mentioned at the start of our conversation about glass ceilings. First of all, can you describe what you mean by the glass ceiling?
Sure. I'm going to give you an example of myself. When I was a little girl, I always wanted to be successful, and I looked at people around me and I just thought, I want to be like that. But I just thought, as a woman, I couldn't be as good as these people. I couldn't be as intellectual. I was never going to be that person that was going to sit in the boardroom. I just had all these limiting beliefs that stopped me from pushing right through. And I remember watching Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when the list goes through.
Yeah.
Aim high, Charlie, aim high.
Yeah.
But even though I watched that, I thought, that's a male doing that. How am I going to do that as a female? Because am I going to be strong enough? Am I going to be big enough? Am I going to be brave enough? Am I going to be confident enough? Am I going to have enough self-belief? And I just didn't growing up. And it took me a long time to realize that I could do it and I can do it. And so can other women. And I also listen to the younger generation. I've got 2 daughters. And we often have conversations and they're like, I want to get here, but, I can't go for that job because I don't know enough about it. I couldn't do the job. And I'm like, yes, but unless you take that leap of faith and apply for the job, no one's expecting you to know everything, but it's about having the ability to learn and being open-minded. So that's what I mean about that glass ceiling. As females, I think we have limiting beliefs from a very young age about what we're capable of doing, because what the world and society expects us to be mothers, to be daughters to our elderly mothers. There's a whole kind of progression and process that we're meant to go through, which then we think, well, I can't do that because maybe when my mum's that age and I'm going to have to be at home looking after her. Or, if we're talking about when we're younger, I've got to take time off for maternity leave. So how on earth am I going to, how can I apply for a job? Because someone might look at me and think, well, you're in your 20s. Well, I know you're probably going to end up, getting married at some point and having kids. Maybe I won't employ you. That was what was going on in my head. And I do think that sometimes goes on now, and it does. But I really want to empower women to say, don't believe any of that. You have your goals. You set your goals in your life, and you may not know what you want to do right now, but don't stop at a certain level. Just keep pushing through, because you never know who you can meet and you never know what situation could change in your life. So don't just think I can only get to this level. Think as high as you can possibly think and have that self-belief. And that's really what I want to empower women to do, and especially the younger generation.
Yeah. So you're almost kind of saying that the glass ceiling, because there's been so much talk about the glass ceilings and that organizations impose glass ceilings upon us. But to a certain extent, we've almost imposed them on ourselves as well through our mindset and through our own self-belief.
100%. And that's really where I am, I'm on a little bit of a quest. I look at my kids and it really fills me with upset and frustration and despair that from school age, they are not empowered as females to be entrepreneurs, to go out there into the working world and be the best version of themselves. And I am offering now 2 scholarships per year, where I will take a portion of the money that I earn from my coaching and basically deliver 2 young females that are leaving university, to give them free coaching and a scholarship of coaching, so that I can really instill this belief in them. And I want them to break through that glass ceiling. I want them to be disruptive in the right way, not in a negative way, but say, come on, I know I can do this. And I want them to also feel empowered and then share that with the rest of their peers, rest of their female peers. I think it's very, very important. And I think that at interview stage, if we walk into an interview and if we are the best version of ourselves and we feel confident about the jobs that we're going into, and we might not be able to do all of the tasks that are there, we're going to learn that job. But to instill these females to walk in and go, okay, I might not be able to do this, but I'm really interested in it. I'm passionate in it, in whatever task and whatever challenge you give me. And I know that I'm going to do well for your business.
Yeah.
Because how amazing would that be if you sat there and if you went into an interview, and I know I would actually get pretty emotional if a young woman sat there with that much passion. I'd be like, I want her working for my company because I know that she's going to make a difference and make a change.
Yeah.
She's got that self-belief and that confidence.
Yeah. And I think you're right, starting them at that point where they're actually entering the workforce with that level of competence, with that level of confidence to be able to smash through the interviews. Some people have it and some people don't. And I'd like to explore this a little bit more with you. Yeah. Do you feel that the pandemic has actually created a kind of almost like a lack of belief, and it's kind of interrupted their learning, hasn't it, to a certain extent, that perhaps they're not coming forward with the same level of competence that they would have done?
100%. I watched my kids sit in their bedrooms with their blinds down, on their phones, on their laptops, sometimes listening in classes and sometimes not. The pandemic has had a huge impact on the way the next generation are coming up into the working world. It just fills me with such despair and upset. And I feel that there should be more mentoring at schools now. I definitely feel the social media as well, because they've been on their phones so much. They feel judged. They feel vulnerable. They don't really know how to communicate properly. No one speaks to each other anymore. It's all via text message. And, look, you and I are the same. Years ago, back in the day, what would we have done? We would have picked up the phone. Hi, we would have organized this whole podcast, but we're sitting on our phones using WhatsApp because it's quick and easy. So we need to understand and acknowledge that technology is with us to stay.
Yeah.
But how can we get these younger kids learning to communicate effectively and feeling confident to have a voice and to be able to speak how they feel and to be able to vocalize what they're going through with each other and in a work situation as well, and in an interview, because it's so hard. It's so hard. I came from a drama school and acting background, and through that, through having to put myself in situations, and I think improvisation is incredible. 2, they should do this. It shouldn't be drama. It should be in your class situations. I believe that teachers should be throwing it out there and getting kids to improvise with each other. Here's a topic. Just speak about it together. Just 2 people together. Have a conversation, right? Because it will then give them confidence to actually go out there and speak once they come into the working world.
Absolutely. And also to think quicker as well, because you're actually then playing off one another and the conversation's moving on and you're going into different places. So your mind is having to keep up with that. And there's a kind of fleetness of thinking that sometimes I feel that social media is kind of brought to a very binary, kind of basic kind of level. So we don't necessarily, use all our cognitive skills either any longer.
Absolutely. And also the language they're using over text message.
There's no such thing as spelling, is there? Can be quite frankly.
I mean, it's crazy. And it was interesting. My daughter and I do talk about my kids because they're the next generation coming up. Mm-hmm. And one of my kids used the word aligned. And I was like, oh my God. And I said, that was amazing language that you use. And she was like, what? And I'm like, you've never used that kind of language with me before. It's always been like very singular. And as you say, very binary.
Yeah.
And I was really proud of her. And I was like really encouraging her and said, look, you need to use more of that language, especially when you go into the business world, because we've lost that. How many people sit there and write with a pen and paper anymore? We don't.
No,
we use computers. They correct us. They, grammatically computers correct us. And now we use AI. So, kids aren't writing from the heart and how they would write in their own personal life and the way that they think. And you're right, we need to start getting our brains working again.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me more about the scholarship, because that's quite an interesting thing that you're proposing here for two very lucky people, young women, each year. How is that going to work?
So I'm going to be launching it towards the end of this year, and I will be contacting universities, and I will be offering universities for females to apply to me. They will write into me and provide me with their applications as to why they feel that they should obviously be able to gain the scholarship and use of my time. All the work we do with coaching is online.
Yeah.
So it won't be taking out of their kind of daily routine. And I probably would think it would be in their last year rather than when they leave, because I think it would be important that, like we were talking about the interviews, I want to encourage and empower these young women to go into an interview and feel comfortable and confident, and to start working on these beliefs that they've started to create for themselves, and then get them to create who they want to be within this next chapter of their life.
Yeah.
Who they want to be. So what kind of work do they want to do? What environment do they want to be in? Because also, I think the problem that we have is when a lot of young people leave university, they tend to take the jobs they can just get rather than looking for the jobs they want and using their skill set and using their, all the stuff that they've learned in their degree. You've obviously studied these subjects for a reason. Let's really look at what it is you want to achieve and where you want to go with your life. And as a coach, I think it's so important that we don't look at the financial gains. I know it's really important to, for us to earn money, but maybe you might have to sacrifice some earnings in order to take a job role that might not be as financially fruitful as you'd like it to be in the first instance. But whilst you're young and you might be living at home, have a look at that. Don't shut it off straight away. Don't think about, I think a lot of the younger generation are, and that is again through social media. Young people have become influencers and they're earning all this money and they're showing all their, designer clothes. That's not reality. That is not reality. And the reality is you have to work damn hard, and you have to start at the bottom to get up and climb up that ladder. But if you start at the bottom and you show you show that you're intuitive, you show that you're hardworking, you show that you're prepared to go through the bottom level to get up to the top, you're going to fast track quicker, because I did. I can tell you that. I didn't go to university. I grafted my backside off. And through having learnt my skills from the ground up and able to have that self-belief and confidence, that's how I literally got up the ladder. And I think education can teach you some things and can give you your information and your knowledge, but then you have to create who you want to be, and you have to create the person that you're going to be and how you're going to show up within these situations.
I want to just share a story with you, if I may, and I absolutely support 100% what you're saying. My daughter, when she was going through her sort of A-levels, obviously pandemic hit, so she didn't sit her A-levels because they were given grades, because obviously she fell in that period of time. But her confidence was not considerably, because she wasn't able to prove that she could do it. She wasn't able to prove what A-level results that she was really able to do. And that really ate away at her. So she decided, she got a place at university, but we kind of decided as a family that she would take a year out, and that's exactly what she wanted to do. She wouldn't speak. She wouldn't come out of her bedroom. She wouldn't engage. Everything was done on social media, and she was really withdrawn, and we were quite worried about her. We didn't feel it was right for her to be going at this time. She got a job at the volunteering centre, and what they did was they put her on the phones because they wanted to raise some money, and they got her picking up the phone, and she didn't want to do any of this. I can't possibly pick up the phone. She had to pick up the phone and talk to strangers about actually donating and giving money for this particular charity. And the skills she got by doing that, and the confidence that she began to build over a period of 6 months, it took her a while, it took her 6 months, after that kind of stint was over, she then went and worked in a pub. And suddenly she completely turned it around because she had to engage. She had to be pleasant. She had to be jolly and chatty with the punters that were coming in. She had to kind of like count the money and not just rely on the till and work out the beers and the wines and whatever that were being ordered. We saw such a change in her in a very, very short space of time. By the time she went to university, she was a completely different person. And that's what it took. It almost took that kind of fully immersive, get your ass out there and go and do it to really help her turn things around. And I'm really proud of what she's done and the strength that she actually showed in that year.
I absolutely love that story, really. And it reminds me of when I was younger. I worked for my dad and he ran a sales promotion company, and there was an offer going on, a kids go free offer. And I needed some extra money. So he said, right, come into the office. I've got 200 amusement parks. I need you to get on the phone and I need you to sell this kids go free. I want them to offer, free ticket.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? He went, there's your script, get on the phone and sell. And I've never been so scared in all my life. But you know what? Once I did it, it wasn't so bad because it was about learning to engage with people in my head. And I think, with a lot of people get frightened of sales. And I don't believe in selling. I believe in connecting with people, engaging with people, and giving people information so they can make a choice as to whether or not they want to go ahead with a sale.
Yes.
That's the way I've always worked. The situation that your daughter was in, brilliant. That's what we need to be encouraging our younger generation to do. And this is what I mean. It's about getting out there face to face, talking, communicating, seeing people's reactions, not sitting behind a screen. And, lots of people do these online selling the vintage with the clothes. Okay, you can earn some money from that, but that takes you away from engagement. That takes you away from emotions. We need to feel emotions, and we need to understand that a lot of the anxieties that the younger generation go through are because they don't understand how to communicate, and they're scared of their own voice. They're scared of judgment. But what if I say that and someone laughs at me? Honestly, no one is going to laugh at you when you open your mouth and have a conversation. And if they are, they're a horrible person and they're not your person, and you don't need them in your life.
Yeah.
But just because you might have had a situation in the playground at school when you were kids, and now you're sitting on your phone seeing horrible things being said about people, and people hide behind their phones. Now they're scared to go out into the real world to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by, let's look at that. Is it true? Is the story that you're creating in your head true? Because your daughter probably had created this story in her head as to what was going to happen, and was just so scared. But then when she did it, she realized that's not how people behave. That's not how people are.
Yeah. And she loves having conversations when she's actually she's not there now because she's at university, but when she comes back from her holidays, she still goes and works in the pub. And she loves people. She talks politics. She talks mainly politics, actually. She's got a real interest in the world around her, climate change, all of those kind of things that a lot of young people are really kind of into. And the people that come in are mostly older people that come in, but they love talking to her because they said it's really nice for a young person to have some view. I don't always agree with you, but it's nice to be able to have a conversation and a debate about it. So, loads of stuff around immigration and loads of stuff that they talk about. But the fact that they've got two differing sides and you can respect each other for having those differing opinions. And that's what they really love her for, which is really good. And she loves it.
That's brilliant. I really hope that, if there are parents listening to this, that they should encourage their children to get out into the working world, and it is hard. Give them the support. And I know it's hard as parents. That's why I want to really, help to young women, because however much I love my kids and I do talk about them, they sometimes will look at me and they won't listen to me because I'm their mum. And it's very hard as a parent. You can support your children, but they go, well, you're just saying that to me because you love me.
Yeah.
So I do, but I also want you to do well, not just because I love you. So by me being able to, donate some of my time to young females, and if there is anybody listening to this and they do have some kids at uni, I'm happy to, for them to apply to me as well. I think it's really important. And we will go through, it will be a 6-month program, because I think it's important to have 6 months. And it will be sort of, once a week conversations over video call, talking about how they're feeling, what situations they've been in, really unpacking where they are, what they want to do with their lives, and how we can push them forward so they can be the best version of themselves and aim high and feel confident and have that self-belief. It's just so important, so important.
And that's brilliant. And we'll make sure that we've got your contact details in the show notes, so that if parents are listening and they feel that their children would be they want to apply, then we'll make sure that they can get in contact with you. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Just moving on for a moment, because actually, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about the recent events that have kind of come up with JP Morgan. I don't know if you're aware that the CEO of JP Morgan he's basically put it was, I think, released of him basically saying to all his Gen Zers, all his young bankers, that they need to come back into the office 5 days a week because they're missing out on an awful lot of stuff. He was quite obviously loud, and he was quite kind of aggressive with his message, and he probably could have said it in a very different way. But I think the message underneath that is that for the younger generation, they need to be coming back, even though he was venting his frustration that he felt that young people are at home when they should be in the office, basically on their phones, not actually doing their work. The truth of it, I don't know. But do you have any sympathy with the way he is, what he's actually wanting his new generation to be doing?
Well, I will be contacting him for sure, because I'm putting together a workshop to literally deal with the dysfunction of hybrid working, because I've been working in the flexible office market for 7.5 years. That's what I've been doing sort of full time. And now I'm doing my coaching. And when I have been walking into offices, I just feel the atmosphere. It's something unrecognizable. I don't understand what's happened. Well, I do understand what's happened. I can't believe what's happened to the way that office workers are communicating and coexisting together. And I do think, and I do agree with him, that we have lost a certain amount of opportunity that we are missing out on, and the younger generation moving up. They don't understand what the working world was like pre-COVID, pre the pandemic. And again, social media and our phones as preventing us from really communicating with each other. So I'm developing a workshop to deal with the dysfunction of hybrid working. And that really is bringing in the elements of co-networking, communicating, coexisting together, and giving people the confidence to come back into the office. Because, and I'm sure there are people listening to this, and Jivan, you know that many years ago, I loved going into the office. It was brilliant. It was buzzing. You'd have chats on a Monday morning with your mates about what you did at the weekend. You might have actually socially been out with some of your mates at the weekend. You'd be talking about, I don't know, a spin class you'd be going into, who's doing it this week with us, or a yoga class. And then at lunchtimes, we would be chatting in the kitchen areas or going out for coffees. Before we were going into meetings, I'd have a chat with the CEO. How are things I'm talking personal conversations with my CEO. How are the kids? How are the family? Are they okay? Yes. Let's talk about this project that we're doing. So you would have a really nice 10 quick conversation, and you would get to know the leadership within your team, the executives within your teams that you worked with. That doesn't happen now. You can hear a pin drop in an office when you walk in there. Nobody talks to each other. People have got their headphones on. And then you have obviously people working from home. Now, I can't sit there and say that no one's doing their work. That's for obviously their managers to look at. But I would imagine that the issue that people have got is that they sit small. And when you sit small, you don't shout about the work that you're doing. And you sit small because you're sitting at the end of a Zoom call or a video call. There might be 10 other people on the call. There might be people in the office. We're afraid to speak up, and we're afraid to ask questions. We should be asking questions and engaging with people. If we choose to work from home on the days we do, we need to put ourselves out there. We need to be on the phone to our co-workers, on video calls to our co-workers, and making sure that we are out there and that people know what we're doing. Talk about it. And when you come into the office, talk about it, talk about the projects you're doing, go up to people. I love a desk bomb. I'm terrible. Someone will be working and I'll literally bomb them and go, hey, sorry to disturb you, but I've got a question. Or I heard you were working on X, Y, and Z. You know, can you tell me about that? Because maybe I might have a bit of an idea and maybe we can collaborate together. We are missing so many opportunities to work with each other, to grow businesses that we're working in, to enjoy ourselves when we get into the office, to have personal friendships and relationships, to put ourselves out there so the CEO knows who we are. And then if there's a job opportunity coming up, they'll know who you are before you apply, because then that puts you much higher than somebody who they don't know. They'll remember who you are.
Yeah.
So we're missing out on just so much by not being in the office.
Yeah.
But if we have to do the hybrid working, then you need to make sure that when you're in the office, you're present, you're there, you're talking to your co-workers, you're co-networking.
I love that. I can hear the real passion in your voice, and I can see how much. I know that there are other issues that he was complaining about on the video, but I think the basic premise is that he feels that young people should be in. And I hear that you kind of share that kind of position. I think they come in 3 days a week anyway. And I think what he wanted to do was extend it to having 5 days in the office. And there was a bit of a backlash from the newer generation of workers there. But I think that, you know, the essence of your response kind of, I think, touches the heart of the message that he was actually trying to get across.
I think what we need to do is get people feeling comfortable being back in the office. And what's happened as well with the pandemic is that we're not used to our journeys going in. And you know, don't get me wrong, I've commuted most of my life either, you know, driving to jobs or on trains. And it's about really understanding that we used to do that. We were resilient.
Yeah, we were.
Now, because of the pandemic, we've slowed down as a generation, as a population, as a society. We've slowed down. So let's have a real think about how we can get back into the office. Can we offer flexi working to begin with? Can we say, okay, if you can't get on your trains in the morning, you can't get a seat, and that really does give you anxiety, maybe you can come in at 10 and work till 7, so you miss the rush hour, you know, or you know, maybe you don't do a full 5 days. Maybe we start on a 4-day working week, see how that goes, and you only do that twice a month. It's about slowly getting people back into the routine of getting back into the office. And I don't know whether people will be back 5 days a week. It's going to take a while if it does happen, but you do need to instill, you know, some education and some mentoring, and definitely, you know, I'm so excited to launch my workshop, because once people see the benefits of being in the office, that's when the shift will happen.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that workshop actually develops. Lisa, it has been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you for so much longer, and there are so many more topics that I think I want to be able to touch on you, but we will have to save some of those to another time.
Absolutely.
Where can we, my listeners, get hold of you if they want to talk to you either about your workshop or around the sponsorship, or even from a coaching perspective?
I have my email address is lisa@realwoman.coach. So it's lisa@realwoman.coach. My website is www.realwoman.coach. We are going through a little bit of a rebrand and a reconstruction on the website, so you can have a look at it. And all my details are there. You've also got the podcast, which is Real Women Stories with Lisa Quait. And that really covers lots of different topics in terms of our journey as women, as mothers, as daughters, as wives, as friends in relationships. So you can catch me on Apple and any of the usual platforms. And I'm also on Instagram, Lisa Quait.
Brilliant. We'll make sure that all of those details are captured in the show notes so that we all know how to get hold of you. Lisa, again, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure for me. And I'd be happy to come on again to talk about lots more stuff.
There's loads of stuff. We didn't even touch on DEI, but we'll have to park that till another time. Anyway, thank you again, Lisa, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you.
Wow, what an inspiring conversation with Lisa Quait. If there's one thing to take away from today's episodes, it's this. The biggest barriers that women face today aren't just the external ones. They're the ones that we've been conditioned to believe exist, but they tend to be in our heads. But as Lisa reminds us, with the right mindset, support, and a willingness to challenge those limits, we can certainly rewrite those rules. What are the barriers that you're facing? Let's keep the conversation going. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Let's amplify this conversation. So till next time, keep challenging the status quo, supporting each other, and making our workplaces better, one conversation at a time. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with some more HR hacks, and together we can polish some more HR halos. See ya.